Hello everyone. I felt like making this video as a showcase of how Chaotix isn't only fast with Charmy and Mighty, and how all these characters can make the run interesting. If you're a Games Committee volunteer for a speedrun marathon, then the chances are I've submitted a primary character Bidwar, where donations get to choose which character I use. I'm going to explain a few things real quick before showing off this game in a new perspective. Knuckles' Chaotix has an eclectic cast with a whole host of different abilities. In a typical speedrun, the game is at its fastest but made rather trivial by Charmy B, a flight type character. All other characters are grounded but have their own ways of making this run interesting. Vector has a mid-air dash, Mighty has an awesome wall kick, and Espio can run up walls. All of these characters utilise the physics of the throwing and holding mechanic to add even more unpredictability into a run that is ridden with RNG, especially so given the franchise that it's linked to. So how is this being presented? Well, we have five main characters, we have 5 stages, each with 5 acts. So after the first act, where we have to use Knuckles and Espio, you'll be watching 5 runs combined into one, with each stage having a different character in charge. The list being Espio as the main man in Botanic Base, Mighty the Armadillo as the lead in Speed Slider, my beloved son Knuckles the Echidna in Amazing Arena, Charmy B in Marina Madness, and Vector the Crocodile as the go-to guy in Techno Tower. These stages will be appearing in a random order due to an element of RNG in how we progress. This game is a bit of a mess, but I better not get too ahead of myself and leave some talking for the run. So, enjoy the chaos. Enjoy the chaos. So time starts when we hit our save file. Now, Knuckles' Chaotix, I've explained how the partner mechanics work, but we don't have to use them as soon as we start the game. We get full control over Knuckles. He's sort of unhinged. He isn't chained, or as I like to call them, married. As you can see, Knuckles and Espio are now married. They're holding their rings. Yeah, we support a iconic gay couple. So we've got to do some waiting around here. This is a cutscene that adds to the lore, I suppose, but there isn't really much lore in this game anyway. And then we skip this tutorial, and we are now using this is our first instance of gameplay where we use both characters. Immediately, we use a clip to get through that door so that we don't have to line the characters up like here. We do have to do this in this section though, that's something that we can't avoid. Unless, of course, we were the tool-assisted speedrun, but we are not in this case. We now move on to our next bit where we have some more holding and throwing. This is going to become particularly useful for the characters that, well, the characters that need to utilise it more. It's interesting, you'll have a look in so many different Sonic speedruns and you'll see how useful the spin dash is. It's not something that's particularly useful here. It's been nerfed in this game for whatever reason. Sega, I think they wanted more sort of emphasis on this teamwork mechanic, which can be quite jank. I must confess that these aren't the best times for my fit with these characters. It's sort of an example of what I suppose a no reset of going through these runs would look like. But we're making our way through the initial stages. This is our last part of the tutorial. Got to do some more flinging, almost to the top here. There we go. And we are at the end. Because we didn't collect 50 rings, we don't have the option of a special stage there. The good ending of this game scares me, so good reason for me not to, I'm going to be honest. And this is where we would usually, in a typical speedrun, we'd pick Charmy B. We have picked Charmy B in this instance because sort of stitch the run together, showing off different characters in different stages, as you've heard before. But we've got to pray for good RNG. Mighty is consistently in that spot, and Mighty is the optimal character for Charmy, so we did well there. And then this is the element of RNG, so we of course want to hit this bumper as quick as we can so that we can get to our next stage as quick as we can, but depending what stage we land on is a mystery, so we never quite know. But we've landed in Speed Slider, and for Speed Slider, as aforementioned, we have got Mighty and Vector. So Mighty, he's one of the stronger characters because yes, there are variables in this game for how strong, how light, and I believe there's another one, I can't quite remember what it is, how fast a character is. Yeah, there we go. So we're using Mighty's wall kick here, and we're using the fact that he's a strong character and that we can throw Vector around, and no, Vector's just happy to be here. You're going to see Vector's idle animation in a second, which is such good fun. Yeah, there we go, he's rocking out. Gotta rock out with your croc out. You'll notice that we're on minus 14 rings in this case. Now, whenever we're on minus rings, the ring countdown happens much, much quicker. So that's something that we're going to consistently try to be doing. It's almost certain that we can do it with Charmy and Mighty, because Charmy he has his full freedom of movement even without Mighty. But when you're using two characters that you want to sort of be throwing around the place, you can't afford to fling the characters away. And that's how we reach our minus 10. So when we fling a character away, when they sort of become inactive for a little bit of time, we lose 10 rings, and that's how we find ourselves in debt. Let's see if we find an example here. So this is the route that we want to be taking with Charmy and Mighty and Vector. And we're using that holding mechanic again, flinging ourselves further up through the stage. Even further up. Now these stages are very vertically based. Sega knew that people were gonna have to be flinging themselves up and flying up. So here we go. This is the removing rings. We're sort of sending Vector out of the play, and then he comes back. And yeah, we're in debt. A little bit of trivia for this game, I suppose. All of these characters, for whatever reason, well, they all have their own reason for why they're on this neutrogic high zone, which is supposedly the name of it. I believe, although I should know, being in the West myself, the Western audience have their own lore for it. But yeah, they all have their own reasons, which is interesting. I'll come back to. But we're on a new character in a new zone. We are in Botanic Base. And we are with SBO and Charmy. Now, one thing that's a little bit annoying of how the RNG in these stages went is that you don't get a clear visual of the difference in time of day. Now, there are 4 different times of day in this game, and we have found ourselves in, I believe, sunset for Botanic Base here. So the colour palette has changed a little bit. You can see SBO's wall sort of running there. Tried to do a little clip through that slope, but it didn't quite work. And then we just run to an end. Quite a nice quick stage. Again, flinging away Charmy. Interesting, although Charmy is so light, the way that the second player, the way that the AI, the CPU works, having Charmy as a secondary character is quite rough. Because he every so often he'll just glide when you don't want him to. He'll sort of hover. And that can hold the player back. Builds up speed, but it can hold the player back. Then again, as I say, it's just a complete random case of what stage we get next, and lo and behold, we are in Botanic Base again. And it's still the sunset. That I have to confess that I'm very much somebody who will play a game and enjoy it if it looks and sounds good, and I believe that Knuckles' Chaotix is both of that. I think the game just looks and sounds incredible. Despite Charmy being so light, we can still throw him around the stage. Now if we go around here, we can avoid getting hit with SBO. Oh, not quite. But here we take control of Charmy again, and then we hit the invincibility box, which, as you can see, heavily slows down our game. We're on 32x hardware, so there's no hiding from potential crunch from this game. This game does like to get a bit crunchy sometimes. Which is interesting. It's something that the other games generally manage to handle alright, but even with this newfound power of the 32x, yeah, the game couldn't quite take advantage of it. Using more of Charmy, and now if we can wall run up here with SBO, that means that we can avoid having to take that elevator, and as we saw going down, the elevators that ascend we cannot skip. As you can see, they take a bit of time, so managing to fling Charmy away again, and we end on -6. Very nice. I guess I suppose a little bit of a history lesson for those who don't really know much about the 32X. Understandable if you don't know much about the 32X. It's a add-on for the Genesis because Sega, for whatever reason, thought, let's not sort of put more effort into our new console that's about to come out. Let's make some add-ons for it. And yeah, the 32X didn't really get time to live or like establish a good library. Instead, it sort of fell flat, and yeah, the Sega Saturn was on the way, and then Dreamcast, and then the inevitable end of Sega in the console race. But we're back at Chaotix, and we're back in Marina Madness, which is where we have decided to take use of Charmy and Mighty, the main characters that we would want in a bid war. So as you can see, Charmy is incredibly overpowered for such a small little insect. He can just fly around these levels easy like. And we're at the estate at the end of Marina Madness 1. 22 seconds, that's a neat time. So the reason why we go for Charmy and Mighty here is because, like you saw earlier on, there are some clips that these guys can do. We continue through the game. Charmy and Mighty again, and if the theme for what stages we get after each other, then Marina Madness looks like it's going to be the next one that we get, and lo and behold, it is. So this is the nighttime variation of Marina Madness. Now, Marina Madness 2 has a clip in it, which we're going to use. So this takes use of the physics of this game and how we can pass Mighty through slopes. So that one happened very quickly. And then we go over to that spring, we hold, and then we find ourselves on the other side of it. And then we go right up to the top here because for whatever reason, if we try and sort of dash forward with Charmy on those boats, it doesn't quite do what we want it to. So complete that stage in a nice 19 seconds. We're going to see some more clips later on from Charmy and Mighty, one in the next stage, and then Marina Madness 5. Now there are two characters that don't actually appear in this run that are sort of clown characters, they're sort of joke characters. We can't choose either of them as primary characters, but you did see them in the combi ring earlier. There's Heavy and Bomb, that are both supposedly runaway robots from Robotnik, and well, they don't make your game any easier, I gotta say. I think that I'm quite glad that they can't be primary characters, otherwise they would completely butcher a bid war. But we are now actually on to our next set of stages, and a new character here is Vector and Techno Tower. So we pick up Knuckles in this little section here because we want to avoid, again, taking elevators. Elevators are slow. Who needs elevators when you can just do this flinging that all of the characters do? We're going to try and bring Knuckles over here and do it again. Not quite reaching up to the spot that we need to be at, but we use that very useful that dash that Vector has, getting a nice 26 there. You'll find that with quite a lot of the stages, Amazing Arena, what we haven't seen yet, Amazing Arena, Techno Tower, Botanic Base less so, but Speed Slider, there's a lot of space in these levels, and it gives us a lot of sort of breathing room to try and do our flings and go across the stage. Also, we were not in debt at the end of that stage. We had 6 rings, and because we were under the countdown for 30 seconds in this stage, our time bonus added up, our ring bonus added up, and it had to be counted down, whereas the minuses means that it only counts 100 for whatever reason. Then we know how the theme is going, we got Techno Tower again, so there are some consistencies with this RNG, but it's not something that's really worth manipulating. There are positives to having different times of day. Times of day sort of change where rings are, they change what sort of boxes appear, but it's not the end of the world if you miss out on some of them. As you can see, we hit a box there, but that's gonna sort of bite us in the bum later. So we've got speed shoes, but we're not gonna really gonna use them. We're gonna go over here. The blue springs, which don't really appear anywhere else in the franchise, supposedly sort of push the momentum on to both characters. If only one of them hits it, the other one will still feel the force, and they'll both go up. Whereas red and yellow ones, they only transfer that momentum onto the one character that hits it. But it seemed like we were having a bit of an issue there, so made Vector pick up Knuckles so that they could both zoom up. And the all-reliable Charmy and Mighty. Now the reason that I've sort of had Charmy and Mighty do all of hub world movement is because there isn't really a difference between them, and recording all of them would have been very laborious. We're breaking things a little bit. We're back to Botanic Base. We are yet to see Amazing Arena with Knuckles and Espio. That's not too bad. We get to see some more Espio and Charmy action. We get one step closer to a boss. So the bosses appear at the end of every 5th stage for each act stage. I get them muddled up. So if we were in a different time of day, the little section that we just passed would have had an enlarger box, which makes our character sort of does what it says on the tin. It makes our character a little bit bigger, which of course makes them a little bit faster, and it gives them a higher jump, which is, well, as you can imagine, quite beneficial with these sorts of things. So we're jumping across here with Espio. We use this wall run for a little bit. And then Charmy's being a bit of a pickle here, but we managed to get him along. Jumping across, jumping again, getting to the end of the stage. Comfortably under a minute. It's interesting just how different these characters make the run. Because when it comes to Charmy, it's just a whole load of memorizing, knowing what route to take, the sort of pitfalls, make sure that you don't go in particular sections, making sure that you're managing your rings well, whereas when you're playing with a different character where you've got to be focusing on the momentum, it's all of those things, plus sort of trying to keep track of your main character and the secondary character. And if I submit this as a Bidwar, I reckon the first and second character sort of decides what I use as my primary and my secondary character, unless of course it's not going to make the run feasible. But it should do. It should do. So this is where a stage where Charmy usually shines. As you can see, a massive big space, which is much more helpful to have Charmy sort of going up. But we've got this throwing mechanic, which serves us very well. We've got a little section up here, which is a little bit tricky. Taking a shield. Now, a lot of the different sort of mechanics don't make a return from Sonic 3. We've got the standard shield, we've got invincibility, we've got 10 rings, but this was also the introduction of the blue ring box. For whatever reason, Sega thought, yeah, let's have a blue ring box, which is a combi ring. So it sort of, if you get hit, instead of loads of rings scattering everywhere, sort of one ring that signifies a clump, like usually doing in editions of 10, I believe. But here we go, it's a bit of a maze stage, this one. Gonna hopefully get Charmy to bring us up. Come on, Charmy. Help a dude out here. Another thing that Espio's ability allows him to do is also, well, with the wall running, he can also sort of stick to the top of the ceiling, which in our case, in the speedrun case, it doesn't particularly help. Also, another example of a countdown taking a while. Not too long in that sense. But the time does all add up. So we want to try and get rid of our characters as much as we can. It's definitely something that's very easy to forget, I must say. And lo and behold, I believe we're going to find ourselves in Speed Slider. So this is Oh no, we're not quite getting an example of how of sort of difference between the same stage but different times of day. But we're in the sunset. We spent the day in Botanic Base. You know, it's getting to the evening. It's getting to the sunset, and we're gonna chill out at Speed Slider. Now, I think they were going for Circus here, by the looks of things. It's sort of the colours of a casino level, but not quite. I think I probably prefer the nighttime variation of the stage. But here we go, again taking a set route and making sure that we're going through where we need to. Got some nice flings there. Got to get rid of Vector, we don't want him to stay around for too long. And I sort of like flinging the characters around because once the countdown has come up, you can't move them anymore. And their idle animations play, and when there are less animations playing, generally the game's going to run a little bit quicker. That's alright, that breaks our... Well, this is going to break our sort of run of having two, I suppose, stages of each level of each thing. This game's confusing. Anyway, so we had one Speed Slider, and now we're back to the Botanic Base already. Which means we are on the 5th stage of this, where we have a boss. Now it's nighttime, so the RNG does fare us well, but it's only RNG that particularly helps when we're using Charmy as our main character, so we're not opting to go and get the enlarger box at the start of the stage. Instead, we're going to be flinging ourselves up and pressing hold when our secondary character is at the apex of their, I suppose, when they're at the end of the tether, so that can fling our character up even higher. And then, as you can see, Charmy not really helping things all too much there with the hovering. But you get over to this elevator. There is a different route, but it's not as consistent as this route. So you can see those doors there. Those are doors that we can go into. But in a speedrun sense, they're not very useful. They're sort of loot rooms, I suppose. So they're filled with different item boxes, and I don't think they have enemies in them. So they're sort of, yeah, rest points. But in a game like this that sort of treats you so much with rings and the like, it's not really something that you need. SBO's jump being a little bit tricky for us there, but SBO, Charmy's hover actually helped us there and made sure that SBO could go back onto the wall and start running up it. Which is something we do here twice to avoid having to take the elevator. That one was a close one there. There we go. He's probably my least favourite character of the game, but his wall running can be very, very helpful. And we're just doing a bit of throwing around here, and now this boss is made, like the rest of the game, it's made incredibly trivial by Charmy, but we're going to try and land in all of our hits here with Dr. Robotnik. And then, again, a very interesting invention. This man seems to like to reinvent the wheel when it doesn't really need reinventing. So he's got this sort of hovering bumper to try and do something, I suppose. But it seems to be helping us out because we're taking a bounce. You can see both characters bouncing on him at the moment. We want to get a ring so that we don't lose a character. And as you can see, monumental slowdown when we have more sprites on screen. But that's alright, because that means that we get through this boss and... we're out. So we must have hit a box somewhere in that stage, which means that we had a secret bonus, which means, yes, more to count down, which is slowly adding time, but it's not the end of the world. So that means Botanic Base is done. We don't have to go back to that stage, which is a shame because I love how all of these stages look, and Botanic Base is certainly one of the nicer looking stages. But that means that we haven't had a single amazing arena, but our luck is going to change, although, I mean, it's something that we've got to do in this run, but Amazing Arena is a very tough stage. But we've got the main man Knuckles for this. Let's see how it goes. So, Amazing Arena. What sort of changes does this bring us? Because all of the other stages seem quite samey, like they don't have their own uniquities. But In this stage, as you saw just then, we hit a light switch which has changed the colour of the stage. It's brought the lights on, and that is actually a requirement at this stage. If you don't land on a light switch, if you don't manage to turn on the lights for the Amazing Arena, you will actually, like, your attempt at this stage will become void, and you have to come back and do it again, which is certainly the last thing that we want. So we used a bit of Knuckles' glide. He's still got that. He's still got his climbing. And he's got his throwing, which we're going to use a lot of. We just ran over a box there, which is also a character switcher box. So that would mean that our primary character would become Espio, which would be quite useful in this stage, actually. But Knuckles has got a good throw, and he's got the glide, which comes in quite useful in this stage. But we are finding ourselves using a lot of these transporters, which get us to where we need to be. And then, as well as transporters, this game has pipes because, you know, Sega thought, let's take some ideas off Mario because it seems to be working for him. And then go pyong through there. And then we are right next to the end of the stage. And if we're lucky, oh, not quite. There's a funny little trick that you can do in this game where you can send the secondary character over the signpost and then use the button to sort of withdraw the secondary character. And you can end the stage without any of the characters on screen. It's a little bit silly, but I find it funny. So yeah, I mentioned it earlier, the characters all have their own different reasons for being there, and it will surprise you why some of them are there. Knuckles is there because it's sort of just randomly appeared out of nowhere, and he wants to know what's going on as protector of the Master Emerald. He's got a duty to know what's going on around him, so he's just checking out. I think Charmy is just sort of, he's travelling, and he finds himself there and thought, okay, this is interesting, let's have a look. Can't quite remember the other characters, but the one that sticks out most is Vector, which in the Japanese manual supposedly is there on religious basis, which would point to the fact that there is a god in the Sonic the Hedgehog universe, but that's I don't think a lot of people are ready for that topic. But so here they go, they've gone through, we've hit the light switch for this stage. Espio is being a bit of a tough customer, but we've got him back in this teleporter. And then this is a stage that greatly benefits from the enlarger box, but at the bottom of this like big, narrow, I suppose like actually tall tower, we can't get it in this time of day, so we've got to make our way up by running and flinging. And there we are. And actually, I mentioned the good ending a little while back. Now, the good ending, we're not collecting Chaos Emeralds in this, but we are collecting Chaos Rings, Chaos Fruit Loops, as coined by Protosonic, another runner of this game. But also, in the Japanese manual, they were donned Holy Rings, which is, again, another sort of look at potentially the religious undertones of this game. But we found ourselves in a mini-boss room, which is very easy to skip with Charmy, but in this case, we can't skip it very easily with Knuckles and Espio. So we're just trying to hit the Robotnik head, which we do, and we want to go over to the left of the screen because that's where we want to be going, and we don't want to get any more rings than we have to. So again, another fling up here. We don't want to get hit by this enemy though, if we can avoid it. And we keep ascending. Oh, here we go, this might be it. Oh, we brought him back up. If I'd got rid of Espio on that point, we could have had the no character cleared, but we got through. We were on minus rings, which is important. And I think there's something about this game, I think the attention to detail, although all of the stages are quite samey, especially in a speedrun sense, like, I know that they're different, but to the average viewer, it might not seem all too different. When you're in a casual playthrough of this game, you notice a lot more. There's a lot more going on in the stages than meets the eye, and the fact that there's sort of a different colour palette for each time of day, the fact that the layouts are a little bit different, and the fact that the music changes when you're in the hub world depending on what time of day you're in, I think is a lot of fun, and is one of the reasons why I think, wow, I think this game deserves a bit more love, and I love this game. I've loved showing it off on various different hotfixes, different marathons, and yeah, it's a lot of fun. Now this amazing arena light is very easy to miss, but we don't in this sense, and hopefully SBA's hit that button for us. He has. It's a clever little trick. You can do that with Charmy as well, and Charmy and Mighty, where you sort of delay your jump down to that platform and your second character sort of flings themselves towards the light switch. Actually, the light switch, the door switch, because we want to get through the door. And now we're in this lovely pink amazing arena. Now I'm not a big fan of pink, but the look of this stage is considerable vibes. Considerable vibes. Forgive my Britishness, but I think it's an incredible looking level. And we come out of it just under a minute, which is nice. I know I mentioned the different stages, like the different tracks for like what time of day it is on the hub world, and I've got to confess that I think this is my favourite soundtrack. I'm making a lot of confessions in this video. I love this game, and I love how it sounds, I love how it looks. It's just, I feel like it's got a lot of charm. Our streak of amazing arenas is almost coming to an end, but you can't get out with without sliding one more in. This is Amazing Arena 4. This is where things get a little more spicy. We've got a little more sort of wriggling around to do in these stages. I think we have more elevator movement, and we don't want to get hit by those enemies. We were only on one ring. And one thing that we haven't actually showed off yet is what happens if you get hit with minus rings or 0 rings. So we might do it here if we're not careful. So what happens in that case is, because this, as you can see, this game doesn't have a system for lives, we actually find ourselves losing our second character. So we have a bit of invulnerability when we lose our second character. We have a few iframes, but once we've lost that character, as soon as we get hit next, we will get transported back to the hub world, which is not what we want, because that means that we've got to repeat a stage again. So it's another element of making sure that you're good with your rings, because if you've got rid of all of your rings and you want to approach a boss, say, then you want to make sure you have enough rings, but you don't want to slow down the game, so you don't want to have too many rings. But you also don't want to die, so you don't want to have too few rings. It's a tough balancing act, which makes the game interesting, and it sort of makes things harder for you, but I can forgive it, because this game is my baby. I love it. And then we're going to come up to another room, which hopefully we can skip. We skipped a mini-boss room with a character other than Charmy, which is actually, I'm going to blow my horn a little bit, as quite cool. And, well, it makes me happy at the very least. So getting through there, can we get rid of the character on time? Yes, we've got rid of SBO enough times. And we have a quick countdown, we have it. Very nice. Again, I don't quite understand what's going on with how we're getting transported to these places. There's this little thing that shoots us off into the distance once we've picked our stage, and then we sort of walk back. It's all very confusing, and I think the less sense that this game makes, the better. I think it adds to the mystery, because this is a strange game. But as I'm going to keep on banging on, I love it. I love it. So we're back at Techno Tower. We're going to be using Vector's dash again, but of course we're going to be using a spin dash. So again, this is another space where we don't want to go into the elevator. We did a nice little switcheroo with Knuckles and Victoroo there. Victoroo, that's a good name. And now this is a tough little spot where we have to use our dash, but we managed to do it nicely. If we get that wrong, it's very easy to sort of fall down to the bottom of the stage. This is looking like a decent level. There we go. Techno Tower 3 and 24 with a character that isn't Charmy is nothing to sniff at. That is a good stage. But it all happens so quickly. So all of the times that we're getting in these stages is being counted up, because this game does have an in-game timer calculator, inside the game. That's what happens. That's why we try and run with a save file. But it doesn't reflect how fast you've actually gone in the game very well. So I can think of places on leaderboards where somebody's got a better like real time compared to somebody else, but their in-game time has been horrifically behind because in-game time doesn't take account of what you're doing in the hub world. It also doesn't take account into what you do before the final boss. Now, you might think, well, what do you do before the final boss? That's for when the final boss happens, but yeah, it's interesting that it exists and how unhelpful it can be. Again, this is another moment in Techno Tower where we don't want to find ourselves going down a particular spot, but we managed to fling ourselves up there nicely. A few more things up here. Now, I believe this, for any other character apart from Charmy, this is quite difficult to try and get around, especially with these rockets shooting at us. So we managed to get through that with Vector. It's a little hard loop to get around, but we get there. And Vector's one of the heavier characters, so it's useful that he has his dash. It makes him quite sort of nimble, as well as his climbing. You can tell I prepared this video while I've just run off for a glass of water. Anyway, we are now back with Charmy. Charmy, I keep on... Honestly, when you've recorded all of this footage, sort of done so many runs with all of the different characters, you do sort of lose your head a little bit. There are so many characters that sound similar. So, Charmy and... No, Mighty and Vector. There we go, that's what we were going for. We got there. This is them in Amazing Arena 4. Amazing Arena 4 is an incredibly easy level. It's an up, down, and then right. There you go. Easy as you like. We want to get rid of Vector though. And there we go. Interestingly, in the time that I recorded all this footage, the game ran very stably, and every so often it can have its moments of sort of stuttering and only moving sort of a frame at a time, and then it sort of jumps back into reality. But no, this game is generally quite solid. It knows what it's supposed to be doing, but because the 32X, the add-on that's on top of the Genesis, that's rendering different sprites compared to what the main console is doing. It's all sort of technical stuff, I don't really know all of it, but things move differently, and because the characters are rendered by a different bit of hardware and the rings, it makes for some interesting things sometimes. And again, I can't really do the explanation justice, but here we are. We are in another 5th stage, so that means that we're going to have a boss at the end of this, but we're running through Charmy and Vector. Nope, Mighty and Vector. Thank you. I see Mighty on my screen and I automatically assume I'm doing a basic run of this game. But we find ourselves going down here. It's a lot of up and round just to be going sort of seemingly back to the start. But we get another one of these cutscenes. You notice the one in Amazing Arena? No, Botanic Base. There we go. It's so hard to get. It's all this alliteration and characters. If you notice the cutscenes, extra points to you. Now this boss is quite linear in sort of what you do with it, and it's sort of the same for all characters. You just want to hold on to one of the characters and you want to be ramming this sort of ring in the middle of the stage. Ideally not be running out of rings, but we did it. We did that boss. Get rid of Vector. We're on -9. And whoop-pow, we are finished with Speed Slider. So we're slowly, we are with haste getting through all of these stages. It feels like it goes on forever, but actually only about 35 minutes through. This is decent pace with all of these runs stitched together. So a reminder that if this was to be taken as a Bidwar for your marathon, then it would be a case of people choosing what character we go for to choose for the whole run. So sadly this isn't a game where we can just pick and choose. every single time. It would require a lot of sort of exiting out and changing sort of via menus, which would probably double the time at the very least. But we're in Amazing Arena 5, so we're going to have another boss at the end of this stage. So we are finding our way up to the top here because we want to take this transporter. Then we hold on to SBO here because we don't want to get dunked by those two enemies. And then more throwing and holding. Not quite working out for us there, but using Knuckles as climb because he knows what he's doing. More holding and throwing. And then we want to make sure we land on those platforms because they collapse and we want to be going through them later on. Again, another absolutely gorgeous colour scheme, like colour palette for this stage. Amazing Arena, as much as I hate it structurally, it looks good. It's a good looking stage. Amazing Arena 5 is very much transporter, the level. We want to keep on going up and right. So there we went up and right and we're going to go up and right again. Make sure we don't jump off that ledge. And pew, up, right, and then sort of around a little nook. And then we want to take another pipe. This time instead of taking the one in the middle, like in the third stage, we're going to go for the one here at the top. And that pew takes us all the way to this part. So again, another cutscene. Cutscenes also change depending on what time of day. It's the little things. It's the little things. And here we are. So this one is actually, out of all of the bosses, like, the bosses are generally quite hard to choose. This one becomes harder when you don't have Charmy because this boss really likes to take down your rings, and it's one that doesn't slow us down too much, but we want to keep as many as we can because of these enemies that Dr. Eggman is spawning whilst we're away. So we might have to take it quite calm here because at the moment we have lost all of our rings and we're at risk of losing SBO if we're not careful, but we just about managed to make it. It's good. Crisis averted. And we're making our way through. So goodbye, Knuckles. Thank you for your service. We always appreciate what you're doing here. And now the only ones that we have left are, if I can remember correctly, we have got Marina Madness and we have got Techno Tower. So we've got Vector and we've got Charmy. Let's see what they can do. I got the names right there. I got the names right. Let's see, we are on to Marina Madness. So Marina Madness 4, I believe. We're going to be showing off another clip. Actually, Marina Madness 3. Do forgive me. And again, actually, this is a point in the game where we can show off a difference in time of day. So this is the night version of Marina Madness. It's a nice sort of, you can see the reflections on the water. Interestingly, of all the things that they choose to animate in this game, they don't animate the background, which is a bit sad. But we are going to try and wriggle through here. We're doing a bit of controlling, trying to control Mighty as much as we can from the other side of that slope. And then we take the boat, because that's what you do. Marina Madness, what would you expect? I managed to make a little joke of this, because you'd think Marina Madness, where's the water, and everything's levitating. So instead of submarines, I thought, let's call these things above marines. Yeah, feel free to have a go at me. This is also the guy who makes the joke of, we're not going whole hog, we're going entire echidna, so I'll let you be the judge of whether my comedy is worth it at all. So through there, you saw that clip. You take a sort of mental note of what you saw there in the nighttime stage, because now we're going to be going into the morning of Marina Madness. And again, as far as nice looking levels are going, this is certainly one of them. So Marina Madness 4 is effectively a glitchless experience. We try not to do any of the clips here because I don't think there really are any for this stage, but as you can see, from the looks of things, our altitude has gone down a bit and we're sort of amongst the clouds and there's a nice cloudy sky behind us, but This is where things start piling up a bit. We've got a lot of sprites on screen, a lot of enemies. We're moving around a lot of rings, so a little bit of crunch here and there, but nothing that the 32X can't handle. Just takes a bit of time. So we're going to make sure that we are getting rid of enough rings by the end of this stage, which I think we just about do. Turning on a 28. Nice. You don't want to be spending more than 30 seconds in the first 4 Marina Madness levels, which I think we've consistently managed to avoid. And whilst we're on the high of that Marina Madness, we're once again, we're going to go back to Marina Madness. So now all we have left is Marina Madness 5, which entails a boss, and Techno Tower 5, which is, lo and behold, going to entail a boss. I do have the notes in front of me. I will say that when I'm running, I will probably lose all track of which stage, like what point I've got to with each zone and which stage I'm on. But that's part of the mystery. So we want to get up on this boat. Make sure we go down a level. And then we can try for a clip here. We're going to hold and then try and zoom Mighty up there, but actually no, this is the one that we do go for. So there's a second loop in this stage that we don't try and do this for, but we're going to try and do this here with Charmy and Mighty. This is something that these two can do quite effectively, which is either Charmy zipping through this loop or Mighty zipping through this loop, and one pulls the other and they find themselves on the other side, which is incredibly useful and speeds things up a lot. So hopefully with one more dash or two, we will get both of these characters through. It's a specific point, there we go. So there's a tiny hole in collision in that loop, and we can just about squeeze Charmy or Mighty through. And then we can, if we want to, try and get through that loop, but that one's a bit tougher and it doesn't quite save as much time. You want to avoid hitting the button there. Again, a lot of sprites on screen, a lot of moving parts, so the game's going to chug a little bit. And hey, here's Knuckles! So this is another box that you can get, which is just character box. Any other characters can appear, and it just happened to be that we spent enough time on that screen for it not to change, and it stayed as Knuckles, and we got the boy. We got the main man there. And now we're on the boss that really takes advantage of the power of the 32X. Mighty's back. He'll do for now. But yeah, 3D graphics. Who would have thought on the 32-bit console, which is what they were going for with the 32X, was only really utilised with one game, and I think a lot of people know that game being Virtua Racer. But we're going to try and wedge. There is a way of wedging Charmy on top and having Mighty below so that we can hit Eggman, but we found ourselves in a point where we've only got one ring and Mighty has gone away from us. So we took a hit when we had 0 rings, which means that we can only defeat this boss if we're careful, which I can be a bit uncareful at points, but we managed to get that. Minus 10 rings. Boss is done. Easy as you like. As you can see, with Charmy making that boss quite straightforward, he does that with all of the other bosses. So the sort of main representation in this game, in a speedrun sense, is Charmy, but all of the other characters sort of have the same, I suppose, like they're starting from the same point. They all have the same base abilities and the same limitations, whereas Charmy is just an overpowered, probably debug tool. They probably just kept him in the game because, yeah, he was probably the debug tool, and they forgot to take him out. It's probably an accident, knowing Sega. But we're on Techno Tower 5 now, which I believe if we are not careful, we can actually hit an enlarger box, which would help us if we can, but I think we actually avoid it in this case. No, here we go. So here is Vector with the enlarger box, which makes him faster. Those dashes that he can do makes them much more sort of, let's say convincing, that's not the word, but much more useful. And unluckily we find ourselves in this part of the stage, which isn't where we want to be. Ideally we want to avoid making this mistake and going up and around here, but when we've got big Vector, he makes it quite trivial. Interesting, there are certainly spaces that it looks like he shouldn't be able to sort of run around in, but that's no biggie. Another cutscene. Love this cutscene. I love the clouds. And now again rendering 3D in commas graphics. Then we just want to bounce and we want to hit the ring in the middle of here. As you can see, there's also a reflection on Eggman's belly by the looks of things. Big slowdown from the rings. You'd love to see it. And that is all of the stages of the game done. So we're not quite finished. We've still got a little more time to go. Because the last thing that we need to do is to fight the final boss. So we've been seeing Metal Sonic here and there. If we stayed idle for a couple of minutes in this game, he would also give us a laser up the bum. He'd make sure that we're getting a move on, much like Sonic CD, where Sonic says, "I'm out of here," and jumps out. But Metal Sonic will return. I'm sorry for spoiling it, but he will. And all this time, this stage picker, whatever it is, has been a ploy, and it's actually filled with booby traps, which hopefully we're going to avoid doing. So in this part, we're using Charmy, and we want to hit the X of this sort of setup of numbers, because when we hit an X, another monitor will explode. So we want to avoid hitting 1, 2, and 4 in this case at the moment, because in the end that would mean one of the booby traps would come out. So we are doing some pause buffering to see which way it goes after hitting the X. Sometimes it can jump back to 1, sometimes it can go clockwise, sometimes anti-clockwise, so we're sort of managing our time, and we paused it enough. You can do that pauseless, it is a bit rough. And now you think, well, what happens next? Well, this is one of the Chaos Rings that we were talking about. This is actually the Power Ring, which I believe sort of controls things, so we're gonna, well, Eggman's going to use this, and he's going to make this absolute monstrosity of a thing. Look at this. This is Metal Sonic Kai. So he is, well, he's trying to put a stop to our plans to save the world. Having said that, credits would make you think that you haven't. We're going to get to that later. So we have done the first stage. We have hit the first arm. We want to hit the second arm. We want to make sure that we collect enough rings so that we're sort of playing safe. Then we want to do consistent movement here with Charmy, where we're going diagonal left, sort of diagonal up and left with our glides. We want to keep on hitting this arm, and we want to make sure that we've still got a ring, because we're sort of damage boosting our way through this. So we're hitting that yellow pad, which every so often Mighty is hitting as well, and he's reducing our rings, but we managed to do that in a decent cycle. And now we're at the last part. So he shoots a big laser from his belly. This is his sort of last ditch attack at us. But we're keeping hold of that one ring, and we're constantly going right and then back to the left, because that means that we can still register a hit, and we're sort of coaxing him over, I suppose. So we're trying to land in as many hits as we can before he goes off the left barrier. And we've destroyed him. If I was calling for time, I'd call when the game is fully white, which it is just then. And despite all of our efforts, the world is burning. we thought we destroyed Metal Sonic Kai, but we didn't. And look what we've done. So that is Knuckles' Chaotix. That is the beat the game. When we do good ending, everything's much nicer. Everybody's friends. But no, this is the biggest slap in the face in Sonic, dare I say. Although I don't want to mention Sonic Doobie. This isn't a Sonic game, this is a Knuckles game, and as such, I've got to say, I think this is the best Knuckles game out there. So if you've been interested by this, I would happily show it off at your marathon. And yeah, I hope that this was something that was fun to watch, and even if you just skimmed through it, much appreciated. And yeah, this game is fun, and even if you don't want to take the incentive, if you want to play it safe with a nice sort of just like decently under an hour run, it's comfy and has its nice strats here and there, but I think it's a very important part of Sonic history, and it's one that's quite often glossed over. People don't really look at it often, and yeah, I think this game is fully unique. I might be a bit biased, I might just be a Knuckles apologist, which yeah, I probably am, but that is what it is. So, that was Knuckles' Chaotix. Once again, thank you so much for watching, and I hope that the rest of your game selection goes well. And yeah, we're just going to quickly skip to the end of the video. Although it doesn't bear any relevance in a marathon context, we are going to go to the end because we can see what our IGT was. The IGT, of course, isn't actually added up with all of our characters. This was initially a run-through that I did with Charmy and Mighty, and then sort of stitched the other individual levels on top, which meant that I could bring it in this package, which was a lot of fun. It's so interesting trying to do all of these stages with the different characters and seeing how best to utilise them, and getting better at the mechanics of the game. So here we go, let's see. So once we get to the end of the credits, we can press the start button, and here we are. We land on 2017. I'm going to pause that there because I haven't done the video long enough. Thank you so much. I've outstayed my welcome. Good luck.